Happy morning, everyone! Welcome to Docdale TV. Once again, this is Docdale, your practical guide in writing and action research in education. This morning, our focus is how to formulate an action research problem. But before that, for those who are new to this channel, I want you to subscribe and then hit the notification bell so that if I have new videos relating to writing and action research in education, you will be updated. Before we are going to proceed to the focus of our discussion this morning, let us have first recapitulate of what has been transpired last meeting. Last meeting, the focus of the discussion was actually on the three different methods of research, namely historical method, descriptive method, and intervention or experimental method. So from that discussion, our focus was actually on discriminating the three important terms when we talk about methods of research. Before we are going to proceed to the core of this presentation, make sure that you have a pen and a paper so that you could be able to write everything. The important details that will help you in crafting an action research problem. So, what is an action research problem? Accordingly, this is one of the most important parts of a research report. One of the most important parts of a research report. Since this is the basis when we are going to conduct a research. If you could still remember during our previous discussion, we should have to identify a problem. Because what's the use of conducting research without a problem? This is also the focus of the study, and all the questions stated or posted should be categorically answered. So if you have 3 questions in your research, you should have also to have 3 answers. No? We should have to parallel this one. Parallel, meaning to say, if you have 3 questions, you should also produce 3 answers. Then the next concern in formulation of action research problem is how can you make the problem specific? Because when we talk about problem, it is a broad thing. So our next concern is we have to make our problems or problem specific. So what are the things or what are the elements that could help you in making your research problem specific? First is you have to define your interest. No, because your interest will help you to work on this. Research is a taxing duty. No, it is a taxing duty. That's why not everybody likes research. Why? Because it will eat more of your time. It will eat much of your time. So that's why you should have to define your interest. Second element is I want you to read a lot of materials and references. No? Because simply by reading, your knowledge will be added. especially if you are reading related literature on the problem that you are dealing with. Next is continue reading. No? So continue reading, read, and read. So that you could be able to be equipped, no? So that you will be equipped on the topic that you are working. Next is identify the special aspects about your interest and you gathered. So after reading all this literature, you should have to select the relative or related literature that is necessary to complete your research. Because even how many literature or you are exposing yourselves to different literature, but you should have to read and select. No, selection is necessary so that you could be able to include only the essential information, essential literature in your study. And the last one is identify the factors or variables that you would like to work on. You should have to identify the factors. You should have to identify the variables, since this is imperative in the formulation of your action research problem. So, the next concern is, how are you going to state the problem? Since every research starts with a problem or problems. Okay, so ito yung pinaka-concern. You should have to identify your problem so that you will know how to state this one. At the start, the problem may be broad or may be very broad, which needs to be made specific or broken into smaller or limited ones. Because broad problems are difficult to address. So for us to be able to address this properly, we have to break down this problem into pieces, into limited ones. Okay. So the statement of the problem may be stated in three forms. There are three ways in stating your problem. It could be question, it could be topical, or it could be objective form. But in this case, our concern is on question form. So, I will teach you how to craft an action research problem in a question form. For this phase of the discussion, our focus in formulating research problem on basic research. So this is our focus this morning. Okay. So for example, with this problem, students' motivation and attitudes towards English language learning. From the example given, there are two variables, no? The independent and dependent variable. Okay. Independent is students' motivation. And the dependent variable is on attitudes towards English language learning. So in formulating action research problem, you should have to examine the variables posted. Okay. So the first variable is the focus of your first problem. And the second variable would be the focus of your second problem. Okay. So here, when we talk about variable, no, for us to be able to measure the variable, we should have to look for an indicator or indicators. So, kailangan nating maghanap ng indicators for students' motivation so that we could be able to measure this variable. Okay. So, this is how are we going to formulate our first research problem. So, what is the level of students' motivation in terms of? When we talk about in terms of, we should have to have indicators for us to measure the first variable, which is the students' motivation. So here, we could be able to search this on the internet. So what we're going to do there, we should have to open the Google, the internet, and then type on the search engine, predictors of students' motivation, factors on students' motivation, or it could be determinants of students' motivation, so that you will be given indicators. And then, try to read literature after searching, and then you could be able to have now your indicators. So for this study, what is the level of students' motivation? What is the level of students' motivation in terms of intrinsic goal orientation, extrinsic goal orientation, task value, control of learning beliefs, self-efficacy for learning and performance, and test anxiety. So for this first variable, we have 6 indicators. And I want you to observe properly how the problem has been cracked. So what is the level of students' motivation in terms of intrinsic goal motivation, intrinsic goal orientation? The I on the word intrinsic should be in a small letter. Small letter since supposedly it is a continuation of the question. Because there are cases that you are going to write this in a capital letter. It should be in a small letter. No? Okay. So, question number 1. What is the level of students' motivation in terms of 1.1 intrinsic goal orientation? Then, semicolon. Okay. I want you to focus here. After the in terms of, there is a colon. On the first indicator, at the end, there is a semicolon. 1.2, extrinsic goal orientation, and then semicolon. Task value, semicolon. Control of learning beliefs, semicolon. 1.5, efficacy or self-efficacy for learning and performance, semicolon, and the article. And why we are putting this end? Because this indicates that the next indicator is the last indicator. No? 1.6, test anxiety, and followed with a question mark. So that is how are you going to formulate your research problem. No? Formulating your research problem properly. Okay. So we are done with the first variable. The second variable is on attitudes towards English language learning. Okay. So how to formulate the question here? What is the level of attitudes towards English language learning in terms of? Again, for us to measure the variable, we need indicators. So that is research problem number 2. So 2.1, cognitive aspect. 2.2, emotional aspect. 2.3, behavioral aspect. Okay. So there are 3 indicators that we could be able to use in order to measure the variable. No? But do not forget the right way of stating your problem. In terms of colon, cognitive aspect, semicolon. Second, emotional aspect, semicolon. And behavioral aspect, and then question mark. Again, what is the importance of putting and in the second to the last indicator? It signifies that the next indicator is the last indicator. That is the reason why we have to put and. Okay. So, but since this study is a correlational study, correlation, meaning we have to determine if there is a significant relationship between students' motivation and attitudes towards English language learning. So our third question would be, is there a significant relationship between variables of the study? No? So, between variables, what are the variables? Students' motivation and attitudes towards English language learning. Okay. So, in this case, we have 3 research problems. And these 3 research problems must be answered towards the end of the study. Okay. So I hope you are now guided. So if there are 2 variables shown in the question, you should have to focus on the variables in crafting or formulating your question. So first is on the first variable, second is on the second variable, and the third is on the relationship. Okay. Another basic research. For example, second problem. Factors that influence the high dropout rate of the senior high school students, and then you add your local. Now, your local is your school. So, this is our second problem. Again, what is our second problem? Our second problem is on the factors that influence the high dropout rate of the senior high school students of. Okay, so you will be the one to add your local. Okay, so when we talk about factors, we should have to answer the research question, why do students drop out? What are the factors that contribute to the high dropout rate? Okay, so when we talk about factors, there are possible answers here. There are possible answers. Why students drop out? Among these possible reasons are, it could be financial difficulties, far distance of students, houses from school, no? Far distance of students, houses from school, students' lack of interest to study, and poor health. So on this problem, no, with the four-mentioned indicators, we should have to see which of these factors really influence the high students dropout. So, based on the problem posted, how are we going to formulate our action research problem? So, this time we are going to know the extent, no? How deeply these factors influence to this problem, high dropout rate. Okay, so this is how are we going to formulate the first problem. To what extent are the factors that influence the high dropout rate of the senior high school students in terms of 1.1, financial difficulties, 1.2, far distance of students' houses from school, 1.3, students' lack of interest to study, and 1.4, poor health. Okay. So, we have now factors to be considered. Of which among these four factors greatly influence? So, what would be our second question? The second question would be knowing which of this. So, this is how are we going to formulate our second question. Which of the factors greatly influence to the high dropout rate of the senior high school students? So we will try to look into which of the four greatly influence so that we could identify, no, which is really the factor that greatly influence so that we could be able to address this one. And in addressing this, we could include this one in our recommendation. So, this is how are we going to formulate action research questions or basic research questions. From the first example, we will look into the variables. Okay. So, from the variables, we need to have indicators to measure the variables. So, first problem, first indicator, second problem, second indicator, and then we will try to establish if there is a significant relationship. Because if we will try to look into the title, students' motivation and attitudes towards English language learning, the article and justifies a relationship. No? So when we talk about and, that tells relationship. If there is a relationship between variables of the study. Second problem, we have to know the factors. What are the factors that really influence on the high dropout rate? So we have to look for a factor, or we have to look for the factors. And we posted 4 factors, and from these 4 factors, which of this greatly influence? So that is how are we going to formulate action research or basic research questions. Simple. Okay. Internet could provide us necessary information. Internet could help us. So I hope that with this discussion, you are now guided. With this discussion, you are now guided. When there are two variables, you need to formulate 3 questions. Okay. When there is only one variable, no? When there is only one variable that could be shown or being shown in the title, you need only 2 questions. But in thesis writing and dissertation writing, you could have more problems. Always remember this, we are in the context of writing an action research in education. Action research. It is not necessary posting many problems. So let's have the basic, let's have the main problem so that we could be able to help the institution. I hope that again, I hope that you are already guided and enlightened in some way. And you are now could manage, you can now manage formulating your action research title. Up next, our concern is formulating research title on intervention or experimental research. Okay, that would be our next concern. Okay, and that will be discussed in the next discussion. So for now, I hope that everything is clear to you when we talk about formulating action research title, focusing on basic research. So basic research. And I would like to say that thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for always considering this channel as part of your daily lives. And I hope that in the discussion, in every discussion that I made in my channel, especially in writing, action research, and education, you are guided, you are already enlightened, level by level. Okay, so this is the very purpose why we are doing this. We are making chop in every lesson. We are slicing the topics here so that you will be guided. Okay, we could not be able to discuss this in one setting. Okay, so once again, thank you so much for watching. And for those research enthusiasts, for those individuals who wanted to write an action research, this is the answer to your problem. Once again, thank you so much for watching. God bless, bye-bye, and stay safe always. Until next time.